right, everyone. Woo! Welcome to Arcane, Season 2. Special effects. We're going to show some spoilers and get you guys really ramped up. Oh, shoot. Just kidding. This is Storyboards.
Knitting.
Lock the door.
This was knitting.
Right? My name is Mike Daley. I'm a story artist at Pixar these days. But I've worked in story for a bit, and I've just really enjoyed it. So I'm really excited to be here to talk to all you and talk to these lovely story artists here, and also slash directors slash everything slash jack of all trades. So what?
Dad. I'm a dad.
Dead. Okay.
That's what I. Dad.
This is not gonna. Okay, this is gonna go crazy. All right. How many people are story enthusiasts? Right. Okay. Cool. Yeah. And aspiring story artists. The same. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Great. And how many? Some of you come with questions, things like that. How many questions do you think you might have? Does anyone have like a question that they would want to ask at a certain point? We'll probably take questions at the end, but I just want to gauge maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, cool. All right, great. Stick around for that. But I just wanted to say that I really enjoy storyboarding. I love that medium. And in terms of animation, I worked in various parts of animation, from animation artist to art director. But I always just really enjoyed the story process. It's challenging. It's really hard. I feel like I'm the kid in the group project at school that's doing all the heavy lifting most of the time, but I truly believe in it, and it's just fascinating, and I always learn. I'm always like learning. So, and the other thing, I'm going to keep a report card on them, so based on their answers, and so that's why I have this little clipboard. It was going to be great. All right, great.
What if we don't test well?
Oh, shoot. Oh, really? Okay. Well, we'll keep it loose.
See.
Yeah.
Can you grade on a curve?
So first, yeah, we'll grade on a curve for sure. If you want to. I mean, it's one of those kind of liberal arts classes, so we can kind of do whatever we want. Credit, no credit, you can do that. Okay. But I'd just like to go down the row and introduce everyone, and just ask a question. Who are you? What are the projects that you kind of came from, and what recent projects have you been working on?
Yes. There's my mic. How you doing? Chris Copeland. I am a director at DreamWorks Feature Animation, co-director with my brother. So cool. I'm not going to say his name. I'll let him introduce himself. Last project I was on, we were show running on Invincible with Amazon for a year, and before that I was directing on Kipo in the Age of Wonder Beasts.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. Awesome.
And I'm Justin Copeland. Did Invincible. Before that, I was at Warner Brothers. I directed a few of those direct-to-video movies. The last one I did was a Wonder Woman movie, but I also did Batman Hush. And then, now we're working on a feature at DreamWorks that we can't talk about.
Undisclosed. The curse of story. To work on things that no one will ever hear about for 6 years.
Hopefully you'll hear about it.
Yeah, I can't show anything.
Yeah. Hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm Alessandra Sorrentino. I work at Netflix as a story artist right now. I'm working on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory with Taika Waititi. And just before that, I was working with that man, and also with that man over there at Pixar. And I was on Inside Out too.
Cool.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I recently just wrapped up on a show called Oni, Thunder God's Tale, coming soon on Netflix as assistant director, and I'm currently at Skydance as a storyboard artist, and on the side, I'm waiting for my first graphic novel to be published in March 2023.
Wow. Very cool.
Before I get into it, I just want to say thanks to Bobby and Jim and the whole LightBox team for making this awesome.
Oh!
This is the gold standard.
Dang it! I forgot to say it.
Yeah, I kind of
That's
cleaned
okay.
up your mess.
Coleman saves the day again.
Maybe not. I'll ruin it. Don't worry. My name's David Colman. Actually, for a long time, I was a designer and then flipped over into story. I work in both live action and animation. I'm currently at Walt Disney Pictures. on Mufasa, the Lion King prequel, as well as DreamWorks in development. Don't ask me how I do both, but we can talk about that at any time. And I can't talk about that either. But yeah, it's feast or famine. So that's all I got to say.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm John Hoffman. I'm head of story at Pixar. Last 2 projects was I was head of story on Luca, and currently I'm head of story on Inside Out 2.
Sweet. Awesome. Woo. Yeah, well, nice to meet you all. And I think the real kind of question is, trying to put this list together of questions, I was just like, this is hard. This medium is hard. What keeps you coming back? What makes you think you're like, I'm going to try this again? What makes you be like, oh my God, that was a lot of work and I'm not going to do it anymore? But, why story? Like, why are you in it? Why are you working on it?
Particularly, it's funny, like one of the things Justin and I were teaching storyboard classes for a while, and I was speaking to our last group of students, and I don't know, for me, man, like, I remember when I got in, now I've been in since 2009, so I'm a veteran now, which is weird.
Great.
But they can hear me.
Oh my God. Okay, we have to separate the brothers.
But I was talking to him, and I arrived at this real simple thing. I really still love drawing. Like, I love drawing, and like for me, that is my return point. That's my peace point. Like, yes, I could grab a camera, I could grab a phone and film a thing and shoot a thing to tell a story, but at the end of the day, like, I really do still find my most childlike self when I'm drawing something, when I'm figuring out how to communicate through a sketch or through a drawing or something like that. And so for me personally, when things get crazy and it's 9,000 meetings in 5 hours, like, any chance that I get to return to just drawing something and exploring that, it brings me my love and peace in a very objective way.
Wow.
That's me.
Yeah, that's great.
I'm just here for money.
Oh, good, great, good, yeah, good. Wrong profession. Anyways.
Yeah. What do we even do?
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Yeah, beat that answer. I'll put that down. Thank you.
I guess I love to suffer. I'm really just in love with storytelling, because it's like, every story has already been told, and it kind of comes to like a very basic feeling that all humanity can share. It can be love, it can be, vengeance, it can be solidarity or loneliness or whatever. But like, we can build a whole story on top of it and around it, and that happens in the story room. And when we brainstorm, we just bring our own experience to it, and so we basically are telling our own stories, and that's our own unique voice. So that's pretty cool. That.
Awesome.
Well, so the reason I'm in story is because ever since I was a little kid, my dad and I, who is in this crowd right now.
Whoa, wait.
So we used to like make little stapled papers of books together, and I would tell him, hey, write a story, and then I would draw something under it. And I've always just had this fascination with like just drawing with an intention behind it. Like, yeah, I like doodling and drawing paintings from time to time, but I felt more purposeful when there was like something to say behind what I drew. Yeah. And I guess to this day, like, I'm still sometimes a shy person. I'm not the best communicator, but I feel like whenever I draw, I'm able to say what I'm thinking and communicate that with people. So it's kind of been my way of speaking to others.
Oh, that's great.
That's cool.
Thank you. Thanks.
I'm in story and I hate it.
The truth comes out.
No, I mean, it's funny. Actually, when I met Mike back at Paramount many years ago, it was the first time I was really thrown into story. I did story at Disney Feature for a bit, but then getting a really good experience of the story room is awesome, and animation. Yeah. Doesn't happen so much on the live action side. It's just like, we got to board the script we're going to shoot. But that energy in there is really awesome. And it also, I get to use like all of my, tools from the sandbox, like in one actually discipline when it comes to drawing, Yeah. I love to make things move. I love cinematic camera. I love acting. I get a little bit of design. There's lighting in there. And also just being able to directly influence the way the audience will experience the written word from the script is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And without getting, it's like even getting this religious, like you kind of get to play God in a certain sense because you get to, seriously, you do. It's really cool. Like you get to set up where the people are in the room, as simple as that, or how, the audience or when you're pitching to directors actually meet the characters and how they're actually going to interact in that story setting. It's really cool to have that ability to do that.
But you're also an evil guy because you can be like, oh, that guy doesn't need to be there, and then you cease to
Yeah,
exist.
you can. You actually can. I mean, you can. I mean, it's you guys, there's so many other directors and heads of story and stuff. And what's kind of cool is you don't really realize, like, even as a story artist on a team, you're kind of a sequence director. You get the main, beats and points from your director or your head of story, or just the writer. And you really, that's where you do get to play God and like how it's going to really play out. So you have a bit of a control, even in an early phase and even on a basic like infantry level. So it's really enjoyable, man. I just, and when I get into it, it's great. Now, I get into things also that suck about it, but that's the next question, I think.
Yeah. Don't jump ahead. Okay.
Sorry.
Those are all good answers, and I think they're all sort of part of how I feel about it as well. But I think there's also a problem-solving aspect to it, and there's sort of this. I was actually talking to someone earlier today about this. Of like, there's this thing where you're working really hard on trying to craft the story of the movie, and there's all these problems, and at some point in the production, it's just like, this is the worst thing that's ever been made, and I don't know how we're gonna do it. But all of a sudden, one thing drops into place, and you're like, holy. That's it. This is, and then you're like, oh, and then we could do this, and then we could do this, and then all of a sudden it starts taking shape, and it's becoming this movie and this story, and you're starting to feel everything you want to feel, and you're laughing at all the great moments, and it's like, that's the moment that you're going for, and that's the thing that gets really exciting, and that's why I keep going back for all the punishment.
Torture.
Torture.
Awesome. Let's reverse order it. Typical day. What's a typical day like for a story artist?
Do you want me to do story artist or?
Head of story. Oh, maybe head of story. Start.
Sure.
Oh, there you go.
Head of story and story artist are pretty different at Pixar. Like most of the day as a story artist, I get to work on my sequence, but people can sort of talk about their process. Head of story is a lot of meetings. I'm involved with a lot of different people. Like I might be in the morning, I might be meeting with the director and the writer, and we might be trying to figure out a moment, or we're just at the beginning of a new screening cycle, and so we're trying to re-break the story and figure out what are we going to do for the next screening, what are we rewriting, what are we reboarding, all of that. And then we're handing off sequences to artists. Also working with artists. Sometimes there's younger, newer artists on the team, and you spend more time with them and sort of help them craft their scenes, and there's a teaching aspect to the job. And then the afternoon I could be in edit, and we could be looking at a sequence or a whole act, and we could be trying to, how are these playing? Do we need to add drawings? What stuff are we cutting? So it's, the days are pretty varied, and every day is different.
Do you miss drawing though? Because it sounds like there's not a lot of drawing there. I'm taking over a little question, but I'm serious.
I think it depends on the show. The show I'm on now, I don't get to board, which I do miss. But I do get to do. I've been doing a lot of drawing in edit, and especially if a sequence blows up and we're like, this is not working, we need to figure something else out. I need to keep the team moving and delivering their sequences to edit, so I kind of have to take on, all right, I'm going to reboard this section.
Yeah.
So I get to do it.
You still get to
here and
play in the
there.
sandbox.
Yeah,
That's
you have
cool.
to get really good at managing your time.
Yeah,
Right.
I'd love to learn that.
Let us know what the secret is, John, when you figure it out.
Typical day. Well, Monday is filled with imposter syndrome, if anyone knows. Monday, I don't know what it is.
The weekend you were pretending really nice, and then
Yeah.
Monday's like, no, the real you, and you're like, oh God.
Yeah. Every Monday I'm starting up, I'm like, it's like just turning the cranks of an old car.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, this is the time they're gonna figure out I don't know what I'm doing. And there's a little bit of a panic, but then there's also that light bulb moment when you actually break a scene. Like for me, you want me to bring up running, so I'll bring up running. But honestly, when we're all given assignments, everyone has their own, process. looking at that blank frame, which is now on a screen, it can be intimidating, you know? For me, I'm always scheduled to do like a morning run the day after my assignment is given to me, and I literally visually block out that scene on that run. And I come up with ideas the whole time, and I've even recorded like while running, and this happens and stuff, and blah, 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 and then I go back and try to decipher what the hell I was saying. I was like, oh, that was when I was running up that hill. Great. Anyway, sorry.
Awesome.
But that's, I've heard screenwriters talk about this. Like, that's actually a very productive day. Yeah. Like, it might not be the actual, drawing part, but you actually come up with a great moment, and then you're executing, and you can just go. And it's going to be more productive that as opposed to sitting if I spent that time in front of the monitor, So I think that's really nice, and when that light bulb moment happens, and then there's this other time where it's like you've got to make a revision to something. I know I'm kind of togging the mic for a second, but as a story artist, a very challenging thing is like having to tell the same thing in a different way every day. It's like, or to shoot it in a different way, or like, it's like, oh, we've got a hero introduction. Great, another upshot. So, and just do it in something that's very intriguing and very, very gripping and engaging. And so it's exhausting, but it's rewarding. So it's like, I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
Wow. Yeah, great.
Well, from my time as an assistant director, it was kind of an interesting role because I feel like most places you don't really hear of a role like that. I would say that it's a mix of you storyboard a lot, but you also have to sit through a lot of editorial sessions. So kind of like a day in my life would have like a lot of meetings. You have a lot more meetings compared to being a storyboard artist for sure. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those meetings compose of just sitting through animatic sessions for hours. Usually you'll get like sent a link on Sync Sketch and watch it for hours and hours. Like you're watching the same thing over and over again and just giving notes and just saying what you think is working and not working based on like whoever your main director, supervising director, or showrunner is. And you kind of just have to apply feedback to kind of keep like the showrunner in check and be like, this is the show that you wanted. Like you have to like, obviously if you're making a Ghibli film, you're not gonna like do some SpongeBob shit in your show. So yeah, you're kind of like keeping people in check. And there's also a lot of like mentorship that you have to do with like storyboard artists. You're like kind of teaching and training people along the way. Sometimes you'll be assigned like one storyboard artist, and then usually whenever you're like assigned a new sequence to do, you'll kind of also have to assign storyboard artists based on their strengths. And if you have time, maybe you'll give a storyboard artist a challenge, because a lot of the time people are going to be assigning you based on your strengths, because let's be real, we're all on a budget. We have like a short timeline to produce this thing. So people are usually going to like assign you projects based on your strengths. And I would say that as a storyboard artist, life is a little bit more chill for sure. Like sometimes I only get one meeting a week. Like the rest of the week is like up for me to be like, all right, what do I want to do today? It's Monday. Do I want a thumbnail? I don't know. And sometimes, honestly, let's be real. There are days where you honestly just don't have anything to do. Those are the best days. So there's like kind of almost a huge difference between like both roles. And it's kind of like, it's going to be different from project to project. You might be storyboard artists on some, you might direct on others. And again, I feel like a lot of it is just based on alignment of like what your style is and what your voice is and stuff.
Great.
They've already explained everything.
All right, next question. Well, next question. John and David and Michelle all kind of touched on editing and being an edit. What's that? What is that?
Edit.
Yeah, like when they say like I was working in edit.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
What does that mean?
It's like basically you have an editor assigned. That's usually the step after storyboarding. All of your boards get sent to edit, and they're the ones that kind of assemble your sequences, kind of like when you're editing a video, except it's your shots. They time it out to music and the dialogue, and like that plays a role in the story too, like how long something plays out for. You might be like, oh my gosh, this shot is lasting too long. This sound effect is weird. Like you have to talk about all of the things, not just storyboards, about like how it contributes contributes to the story.
Become friends with the editor.
Yes.
Yes.
Tell him.
How about you? Did you have some time in edit? You have some thoughts?
No, go ahead.
No,
That's the one. It's true.
The edit department is our friend because just the way we pitch our sequence, it can be interpreted in so many ways, and so just the way that you present it and you time it, you explain the intention of each panel and the acting, and you make sure that things don't get cut off because that's what you don't want. So yeah, edit is it's so important.
Important,
and
yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
My day has been interesting for the past couple of years because I've been working. I'm based in New York, and I've been working for studios in the West Coast. So my day actually starts at kind of like 12 o'clock. So in the morning I have time to do my Pilates, or like I'm a zombie in the morning. So I have a really, really slow waking up routine. So I hang with my cats, I make coffee and everything.
great.
That's really, really important because even just when I go and do my workout, I see people, I see things that actually can inspire me or give me time to think about what I'm going to do after. So I think spare time is really important. And even without that lunch break, when I don't go out and like get my lunch or just get some air, especially when I was at Pixar, there was like a lot of material that I could check out. Like it could be a podcast, but like for us it was amazing because we had so many videos, instructional videos and stuff that can really inspire you. Or lunch break with directors, that's really, really amazing, and learn about like other people's processes, the way they work, the tricks and things that really, really can spark your inspiration. So that's really amazing. And if you're not in a studio like that, there's plenty of stuff on the internet you can check out. So that's really important, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Great.
We could try to answer this together. So,
Yeah.
but our day is actually, it's a lot of. A whole lot. But like we typically come in, depending on what time our meetings are. But our offices are right next to each other, and I'll usually go into his office and sit on one of his chairs, and I'll just be like, I was thinking about last night, the scene with the da-da-da-da, and we'll talk about that. And for right now, we're in story. It's all about writing the story. And we've been on the same movie for 3 years. And they gave us this book, and the book was great in concept, but we felt like it didn't have enough depth. So we're like, this story has to be about us. But it took us a long time to get to that point. It's all of this stuff, like so many, like when you break a story, like we found out what it was, and everybody's all excited.
Yeah.
And those things are no longer in the movie.
It's amazing watching those things die and no longer exist.
Yeah, but it don't. They die kind of slowly, and it's sort of like like a flower dies into the soil, and then a new one comes up. It's like that because it led to this other thing. So our day is about trying to find those things. We had like 4 really big problems in our story. Concept is great, art looks amazing, boards are great. But if we don't figure these things out, it's not a movie. So for years, just going back and forth. At the same time, you're progressing towards something. By this date, we want this, or the movie will die, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, you're seeing other projects just die.
Oh.
But you're still going, so they like us. They really like us.
They like your dead flowers.
They like our dead flowers. They like us.
I take 36 milligram Concerta for my ADHD. So when we're sitting in those meetings, this is why we're a great brother team. He's listening. I'm not. Because I like drawing, and the second that they say something that sends my brain into drawing, it's like. So he's just like, all right, he's gonna float away. But no, it is a lot of the story carving it out. But like I said earlier, I want to see. We're making things that people are gonna sit in seats and watch, right? Like that's the bottom line. And I've always been intrigued. I grew up tagging and doing graffiti and watching anime and reading comic books and all those different things. So I'm always finding a visual. And so I spend a lot of my day just waiting for that, looking for that thing. We'll find a cool story idea, and I'm just like, man, this thing sounds great. But I'm like, it's gonna be better if we show it to them. So I'll just start boarding things out, and then the next day they're like, hey, we were talking about that. I'm like, oh yeah, here. Push play and show them.
Oh,
and
cool.
It has life. And so that's the way a lot of these 3 years have been for Justin and I, where it's like, we're talking about cool things, but we're trying to arrive at the visual and building it, and that's been pretty exciting.
That's great.
Can I ask them a question real quick?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, because you guys are very close, which is awesome. Is this the first project you've done together? Like,
We did Invincible together.
oh, Invincible.
Yeah,
Okay,
Invincible
okay. So,
together, yeah.
do you find that you're really in sync, like one another, or you like the Beatles, where you make beautiful music but you battle a lot? I'm serious.
We
Because
fought a lot on Invincible.
On Invincible, we got it out.
But that was a part of.
because you're invincible. Each one thinks he's invincible. I get it. I get it.
yourself.
I'm younger, so I just called my mom, and it ended the whole thing. That was our first.
So you got it out. Yeah.
That was
Now.
our first professional venture.
Yeah.
Together.
But
That's
the
great,
show was
man.
a mess. I mean,
show, yeah.
You know, we love everybody on it. But yeah, it was a mess, and so that was a product of what we were going through. But we were like, all right, let's find a place, let's find our thing. Like, I can draw, and I'm an artist, I'm a board artist, or whatever, but this fool is the artist. So when he draws something, it like sparks attention. But I'm like, well, hold on. Why are you doing this? Like, what are you?
I am jump off of a mountain and see if I have wings. And
Yeah.
he's like, bro, there's stairs.
Right. And you guys compliment each other.
Yeah, we compliment each other. We only got one shot, and I don't want you to waste all of our time. So.
Yeah.
This is what I think we should draw, and we go at it. He's like, all right, I got it. So then he'll go and do it, and then I'll pitch it, or I'll kick it off, and he'll be like, so what I was thinking was this, and then that's kind of how it works. It's a really
Collaboration in small doses of. I mean, we grew up obviously across the table from each other.
Right.
That's right. Yeah. And the when we were on Invincible together, it was literally just going like, damn, we've never had to give each other the 100% space, right? Like, you are equal in creative input as I am.
Unfortunately.
So it was like, yo, how do we navigate that, right? Like, what do we? And look, he's got 5 kids. I have 4. They're just about the same age. So as dads, you're going like, damn, well, how do we even navigate that with our kids? And that was really the start of we've always wanted to create something together. It was just figuring out like, how do you relinquish a lane, and how do you really make sure that you see this person that you think? I'm like, no, surely he knows I see him, but like, no, I need to make sure that he knows that I see him, and vice versa. And when you give each other that space, that's the collaboration you're doing at Pixar, and where it's the most honest version of that, though. With him, now we foster that in everything we go into, which is like, I mean, you got the floor, like I'll jump in, respect the differences. He loves me enough to go like, you jump in wherever you want to, and so that's great. The dynamic we sort of try to facilitate. Thank you for turning that. That was great.
Turn that.
Yeah.
Oh,
They liked
great.
it too.
They love it. yeah. Thank you.
Wait,
thank
there's
you.
people here.
I'm out. That's great. It's great to hear that, and it's so cool to hear the process. And just kind of speaking of that and going into this, every story artist has like a different process. It's pretty interesting, but almost every story artist I've ever met has like almost a different process of working. When they go from, you get your handoff, it's usually like an idea that you're working on, or like complete script pages, things like that, and then all the way to having final storyboards that you give to edit, or you edit yourself. What's that process like for you? Like, what are those early steps like? What do you do? Do you, thumbnail? Do some people rough? What's that?
My brother thumbnails. He thumbnails, and like me, I build all my models. We build all of our models in SketchUp. I'm not about to sit here and draw backgrounds. That's just my own look. I'm interested in the character, right? So a lot of times I'll go. It's like it's my David Fincher moment, right? Where I'm like, I want to go into the set that I built. I want to look around. I want to find sight lines. I'm taking all my shots, and then I export them all and drop them right into my template. So I have all of my shots there.
Yeah.
And then I'm just going in and putting my characters in that. So like, I like to go right to this clean, rough thing for the clarity of everyone. This is a method that I say it's clarity over cleanliness, right? Like, I'm not going to obsess over the drawing side. If it's clear, my job is done. So
Great.
that's all I'm trying to get to immediately.
Yeah.
But that's my note.
Yeah.
I say thumbnail.
Yeah. How about you?
Wow.
Yeah. See.
Thumbnails for sure. I really like to actually thumbnail on the script itself. So when
Oh.
I couldn't, like when we had just digital scripts, I would print the script and just freaking put thumbnails on it. Because, and it's not even my thumbnail pass. It's like just like a stream of consciousness from my head straight as I read. like I read the line of script and okay, this is what I'm envisioning, because it's lost as I finish reading the script, it's gone. So I prefer to just block it there on paper, and then so at least I have a kind of map of what I want to do, and then I do my thumbnail pass, and I'm really with age, I'm trying to be less precious with my drawings for sure, and just let myself let go, really let go, because it's like I'm an animator as well, and it feels like when I used to animate straight ahead rather than pose to pose. And for those who don't know what that means, it means like if I have to take these sunglasses from here to here, the pose to pose approach should be draw this frame and then this frame and then do all the in-betweens, rather than straight ahead is like ding, 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 right. And so the way that I thumbnail, if it's a stream of consciousness, I don't think what comes after, it's just one thing after the other, and I'm just more in sync with my thoughts and what I'm feeling, and I can, I don't know, I can let myself surprise myself. So I don't know what's coming. So I really like that.
Oh, that's great.
Well, if I'm really precious with my drawings, I try to, make a nice illustration, a nice panel, and then another panel, and I kind of lose it. And in the cleanup pass, you kind of lose that energy that rough thumbnails have, and I feel it always kind of lose something in the second pass. Wow. I try to give more time actually to the thumbnail pass rather than the cleanup.
Oh, really?
Of course, when you clean up, it has to be. I don't know. It has to be clear, and it kind of requires more time to make it nice. But for me, the thinking process is more important. I want the story to be locked, and I want to present something that I'm really happy about, rather than just an idea just right there, but it's nicely drawn.
Right.
So that's more like what I like.
No, that makes sense. How about you?
So for me, speaking of clarity, my process is literally the moment I get the script and you read it, I just ask like the director or whoever all the questions I can possibly think about based on the sequence that you're assigned, because when you're a storyboard artist, you don't always know the full like scope of the story or the episode. Sometimes you're just handed a sequence out of the blue and you're like, oh, what? Suddenly this character died. What the hell happened? So when you're given a script and you read through your sequence, I would ask all the questions that you could possibly think about. No, you're not going to be annoying if you do. I think they would be grateful that you ask them, because directors are already like so busy with other things. So good questions to ask are like, oh, do you have designs ready for this? Is there like the prop or background for this? Because when you're boarding, you can't always just make stuff off the top of your head. Sometimes some projects work simultaneously with Viz Dev, like also in process. And that can sometimes get pretty complicated if you make up a thing in your storyboard that doesn't exist in design. So it's good to ask like what is already existing in the design department.
Or it does exist and
it's
completely different.
Yeah, exactly. And you need you just need to know.
Thanks for telling me.
Or else you'll get your whole scene cut if you like do it wrong. So just make sure before you like overly commit. And definitely ask about like what character intentions are, because sometimes you'll be like, oh, so and so smiled, but it's like it's because he's bittersweetly smiling at like a sad memory, but when you read it might think like, oh, happy smile, but no, it's like subtext. You have to understand the subtext behind everything that you read in the script, because what you read in the script is not always like as it is. So after you get the script, for me, I can't thumbnail on paper, because I feel like I need to see like the cuts that happen between each shot. Because I used to have a big mistake of like, having a character on like the right and the next one they're suddenly on the left. It like helps with screen direction and stuff, especially if you want to like have good continuity between your shots. So Storyboard Pro helps a lot for me with like storyboarding thumbnails, and I just like do it. I just like block out like where the characters are positioned in each shot, and then afterwards I'll kind of start breaking them down, and like usually just a few good key poses are good. A lot of storyboard artists end up like animating their whole boards, and I think that's a waste of time, honestly. Just choose the most important emotional beats, and knowing like where your character is at emotionally is usually more important than like creating some cool camera move that literally does not serve the intention. I know, like, I feel like in the beginning you're so caught up in trying to prove yourself that it's like, just be clear. Like, clarity is key. If people do not understand what they just saw in your boards, nobody is going to care, and people are going to be left confused. So you just want to ask yourself every time you're storyboarding, is this actually what I read in the script? Is this playing out like exactly as the script read, or what the directors wanted? So it's like understanding intention. And then after I break down like key poses is when I clean up. But a lot of the times these days, a lot of the shows I've worked on encourage roughness. So it really depends. But I know for TV, they have more cleaned up boards. Feature is usually more rough boards. So it really depends. But then, yeah, afterwards, your stuff just gets sent to edit.
Right.
All good answers. God, there's a lot to really go into. You know, it's funny, I've even been asked to, when I'm launched on an assignment, like, oh, you can thumbnail this out. I'm like, yeah, great. When I get off that call, I'm like, I'm not doing that. Because to kind of go off of like even a stream of consciousness, like she was saying, is like, there is a certain, I mean, with my boards, they're very kinetic and dynamic, and they're I had one head of story said my work is seductive. I'm like, oh. Yeah. Oh, that word. I was like, I like you. But you know, for me, like I said earlier, like I spend a lot of the time seeing it. You know, sometimes as directors, you have to see the movie. It takes a while to get there, but even as a storyboard artist, as almost like a sequence director, I have to see it. I'm seeing the movie and seeing it in my head. So I take the time to break the scene, you know, visually and mentally. I take the time to do that. After asking the questions that you aforementioned about, like, you know, what is needed for this scene, you know, what's the main beats you want to hit, where is our main character at this point, yeah, are there any sets? Do you want me to work with the art department or virtual art department, in many cases for me? And then I do board like a stream of consciousness. Once I can see it in my head, I just go. And when I can get in a zone, nothing can get me out of it. Except when my wife calls for dinner. And 5 more minutes, I'm like, you don't understand how this job works. I'm like, I have to get into it. But I can also, and like you said, I do surprise myself at times. Like I'm like, oh my God, I'll come up with a new idea. But the main vision that I had of seeing the scene, of actually taking the time to see it in my head, I'm still hitting that, and then I'm just really sprinkling this extra flavoring in there that I never really thought of being there. But as long as the spine is there, you know, that's why sometimes so many people will keyframe it out in beats. The beats are in my head. I know I'm hitting it, you know. To jump off what you were saying, though, about like not like animating camera moves, for me, when I see a scene, I need whoever's going to actually it's being pitched to, I want them to see it the way I've seen it. So I move my camera because I do a lot of immersive camera moves and camera work. I want my audience to feel like they're in the scene, that they're not just voyeurs.
I remember when I was Akeem Dos Santos, who was like the guy who got me in animation.
Yeah.
He was my mentor for a bit, and I remember he told me one time, he said, dude, if you see it up here, that's all you're beholden to. You don't stop until you get that down there. And 2D action TV animation, you're keyframing basically for the Korean animation studios. But yeah, same.
It's the same, and it's really so much of that, and it's not my choices are not arbitrary. There's a reason for it. I mean, and because one thing, make sure when you cut, it's a motivated cut. You know, like I was always taught, don't cut unless you have to. Write that down seriously. Yeah. Or there's a reason for a big camera boom or whatever, or a swivel or a hinge or anything like that. But and it answers also to like with roughness, like my first board that I put down, that's what I will be turning in, because I've seen it in early on, and even Chris Sanders stuff, like on Mulan, I think it was on Mulan or whatever. Like the drawing could be so rough, but there's a look in those eyes that when you go to clean it up, you go, oh shit, and you're like that, because I'm telling you, it's the acting, the subtlety that makes it. I get chills talking about it. That makes it believable. Everyone can do the illusion, not everyone, but everyone can do the illusion of like the broad acting stuff. Right. It's the subtlety that makes your character work read, and that sells the scene, because you should ask yourself when you're going through even acting out your scenes, or even, I still do a lot of acting, even live action stuff. Is this how someone would really react to this? Is this how someone would really behave? And then you have that, and it seems to be cliche to have the mirror next to you, but it's true, and you do the concerned look, and you know. Yeah. So, and sometimes a lot of my process is trying to figure that out, and that little, I've spent like too much time on like a little eyebrow, but it's like, I gotta get it right, because once I get that, it's like, oh, and I can just go from there. Because there's also times I'm sitting there, and you'll see this, I don't know a lot of you guys, but I have like the 1,000-yard stare. I could be in the kitchen drinking water. And my wife's like, are you okay? I'm like, oh, just thinking about story. And then I go, and there's like a little boy inside. I'm like, yeah, I think I got it. I think I got it. And I'm like, like this, and I'm having this inner conversation. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I say, I will paint myself into a corner sometimes when the stream of consciousness. But it's like, it's just like you said, you have to, you know, kill a good idea to get the next the next better idea, the one that works. It's the same. It's the same process. And as one last thing I would say, and I will let you go, I swear. But you told me you should let me talk.
We're gonna run out of time. Sorry, Hoffman.
So,
I'm sorry, we're out of time.
but the and now I fucking forgot anyway. Anyway, so just go ahead.
No, I blew it. Keep going.
Just go ahead.
You were on a roll.
No, I don't even remember now because I started talking. About it. It'll come back. It'll come back.
Mike
just
and
like
the pattern
like
Mike and I
oh,
have blew it.
wait.
Yep, go.
Oh, no.
Water, 1,000-yard stare, wife, seductive.
It's okay. Go ahead, John.
I have the same thing with
That's
my
what happens
wife.
with a story. You kind of just go off.
Yeah, I have the same thing with my wife, except it's when we're eating dinner and I'll just be zoned. And she's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Just 1 second." Yeah. Okay, and then I can kind of like re-engage. I see a lot of people taking notes. I think as far as process is concerned, my process has been different on every single project I've worked on. Like I've constantly been searching for how do I do this? I went from doing really over-detailed, overdrawn thumbnails to going, oh, I'm drawing too much. So then the next film I worked on, I just boarded straight to boards right ahead. That caused all problems. And I ended up at a process now that is stuck for quite a while, which is the same thing. I thumbnail in the script first. I kind of read through it. I figure out all the questions I have for the director, all the stuff that I need to know. I'm thinking about the sequence before it, the sequence I'm going out, that's coming out of it, where the character is at in the movie, what part of the movie are we in. I'm sort of thinking about all that stuff. And then I sit down, I have a little mechanical pencil, and I do tiny little thumbnails in my script. And sometimes the movie sort of starts playing right away, or like I'll read one scene in the sequence and I'll see something right away, and I get that down right away because it'll disappear if I don't do that. And sometimes I'll read the script and I'm like, I don't know how to start this, so I start trying to think live action, and I go, all right, I kind of know what kind of shots I'm going to need. I'm probably going to need a wide shot, so I'll do a couple of sketches of compositions of, you know, all the characters in the environment that they're in. And then I'll like, all right, I'm going to need a couple of overs. What are those like? I'm going to need a couple of singles. Maybe I need a 2-shot here. So I'll just start doing that. And I'm thinking of just kind of stuff that I'll need. And then all of a sudden the movie will start going. I'll be like, oh, this will work great for this part. And then they can move here. This character will go over here and I can do this. And then all of a sudden I'm in a flow and I'm able to go through. And then one of the other things that sometimes I'll think about too is if there's a really important moment that I have to land in the sequence, if it's like a really important emotional turn or the character needs to be in a specific place or set something up, I might even start thumbnailing on page 3 of my script and kind of go, I need to end up here and then work backwards and figure out how do I get there, because sometimes I'll go through the script and I'll be like, all right, and then he's talking from the corner of the room, and then I'll realize, oh crap, he needs to be in that corner, and I have to redo reblock the whole thing. So I'm sort of trying to figure out what problems I'm going to run into, and sometimes it helps me if I thumbnail from that sort of iconic moment and then build out from there.
That's experience process.
Yeah.
Thinking like that. I remembered.
Yes, go.
Now I forgot. No, all of what you're saying up here, there's a couple things though. We're talking about also, like, I also get asked, like, do you light all your boards? Like, you do lighting stuff? So when I see it in my head, lighting is part of it. So I will drop in lighting stuff because that helps tell a story. Use lighting as a tool, whatever is a story device for you. And so, and for me, that's why my roughs will read. I can do it from the rough because sometimes it's just a matter of dropping that tone in. And that clarity, the ABCs always be clear, be clear first, clever second, really will still work. It really still sells. as an umbrella statement, which now is perfect that I remembered it now, is like, it doesn't matter how you get there. You're hearing a lot about processes. Just get there.
Yes.
Find something that works
What
for
works
you.
for you.
So just remember that storyboarding is very individualized as much as you're a cog in a wheel.
Yeah.
And I mean that in a positive way for sure. You're part of a bigger machine.
Yeah, that's great advice, and and it's so great to hear that, and I think that's kind of like so great to hear everyone's process because it's just so. Everyone kind of ends up in the same spot, but like you're coming at it from all these different angles. But one thing you guys were saying was clarity. Sticking to that. But the roughness, but the clarity. Love it. So that's really great. All right, let's go to that kind of the end process of storyboarding, pitching. And though you guys are all pros, so I'll ask you, not just like how do you pitch, to your story team and things like this, but let's say you have a director that thinks a certain way, or you want to get them on your side, or maybe you want to pitch some jokes that maybe are kind of outside the script, and you want to get those things through, or maybe you have an idea. How do you do that? How do you sell your work like to the team? Maybe it could even be to like the art team, or who else is involved. Like you get your stuff, your crew. Like how do you get them involved, inspired? Things like. Oh, okay, good. All right. Oh, is that the key? Oh, that's the key.
The hardest thing. Sorry, I'm real quick.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
We answer to one person in our studio, two really, the head of the studio, and then our chief creative officer. Those are the two people we answer to. So nobody, I hear what you're saying, but I don't have to do what you're saying.
Yes.
But the person, our boss, our chief creative, is extremely good at asking questions.
She's so damn good.
She will. You gotta wear a bulletproof vest because it'll go right through your story.
She's got a hell of a poker face, man.
She'll be like, "Oh, this is great, But one question, and dead."
You're like, damn it.
Yeah, so she would ask us, like I said, the 4 pillars of questions we had to answer. We had to knock each one of those down. It took years, but we just had questions, and we're like, we don't know. It's not that we don't know how to answer it. We don't know what you're getting yet, right? So our pitch is all about selling this woman on this idea that we have, because she is really good at it. But what we did was we realized the one big question we had left, we didn't understand what she was asking. So she made it clear, and we were like, we freaking got it. All right, we'll answer that. And we just went and started boarding. We were like, you take the one character, I'll take the other. And we just went, we looked at it, and we're like, this works. Hit play, and she's like, that's perfect. That answers everything. But it took a long time to get to so the pitching was, all toward answering those big questions.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So she set up those questions, and she's.
horrible.
It was horrible. Wow.
But that's how I pitch.
Yeah, phenomenal.
Yeah. How about you, Alessandra?
So pitching is a big deal actually, because there's story artists who are introverted, story artists who are extroverted. I'm introverted. I don't particularly like pitching, to be honest. So I came up with my own system because I don't like speak to people in general. It makes me really anxious.
Yeah. How are you feeling right now?
And so even if it's your group and your team, it's a big deal. And you're very vulnerable in that moment because you're presenting your idea, part of yourself, right? So something that works for me, and I also tell to my students when I teach them about pitching is definitely practice before, because don't get to the pitch at that moment and you're like, okay, you have all that energy and you're nervous and you're like, oh, they're gonna like it, they're not gonna like it, whatever. If they're gonna like it, it's tomorrow's problem. But you have to believe in what you are presenting. So make sure that you remember all the dialogue, you remember what's happening, you put your energy into making the noises, making the little sound effects, and just put some personality into it, because that's really important. It has to be convincing. So that's one thing. And the other thing is about problem solving and solutions. Sometimes you work on the script and you come up with your sequence and you pitch it, and then you have another idea that you kind of want to pitch it as well. Maybe it's a different line in the script, like an alternative, and so something that's nice to do is to pitch it as an option B, always as an option. So never really never change the script if you have something that you think it can work as well or differently or whatever. Just pitch whatever is in the script, and then, hey, I was thinking this could be an alternative. What do you think? And that director will be very happy to hear it either way, because it's another thing to think about. It's food for thought, and it can spark a conversation with the story team, and it can end up in the movie as well. So
Not just a
that's-
wrist.
That's something that I like doing.
Yeah, so I'm also a fellow introvert, and when I first started having to pitch, it literally gave me anxiety attacks, like all day, every day. I would like rehearse with my friends over Skype, but also at Netflix Animation, they had these like privacy soundproof booths. I would always go in them with like my laptop and just like pitch things over and over again, especially when I first started. Nowadays, I feel a little more confident because it's just like, whatever, who cares? Another day, another nickel. We all know what we're here for, whatever. We all sound stupid, whatever. So I feel like rehearsing definitely helps you gain some confidence, because I feel like whenever you pitch, sometimes you have a tendency to overly explain what's happening in the boards, and that kind of ruins it. So you want to practice like making sound effects and like speaking the dialogue as if you're watching the movie, because when you're watching the movie, there's nobody narrating like, oh, Bob walks to the ice cream store. Instead of walking to the ice cream store, you might be like, like to show like, oh, his steps or something.
Right.
So you want to try to like pitch as if the person you're pitching to is just watching the movie. And yeah, there are going to be moments where there are rougher scenes where you might need to explain a little bit more, but that's where I'll say, like, with ideas that were not really like passed to your director yet, that you have, that you don't know if they'll accept yet, always leave those a little bit rougher. Don't overly commit, because for me, I'm just like, you know what, this show isn't my baby, this is not my child. Why am I putting all this extra work for something you never asked for? Unless if I feel truly strong about it. Like if there's a strong emotional beat that I'm like, oh no, I get this part, and I really feel strongly about it, I'll do it. But if there's like something that's asking this intense, like that would like be a whole additional like 10 shots, I would just keep it really rough and see how that goes first before you overly commit yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then when you pitch again, I just think if there are moments where it's just better to be silent for it, stay silent, especially like strong emotional moments. It kind of just breaks the mood if you're just like, oh, he's crying. Like, okay, like, no, like try to maybe sob a little bit or just leave it silent. Just know that there are going to be moments where silence is stronger than just talking. So yeah.
That's the advice I've heard all day. Try to maybe sob a little bit.
Yeah, basically, that's the time to release all of your pain.
I already did today, so dry it out.
If it's a Monday, impossible, I got you.
Yeah, there you go. That's a very good advice you gave. Also, yeah, exposition is a no-no. So don't talk about what you're showing. Like if there's an action scene, just let that play. Show, don't tell. You hear all these cliches, but cliches are cliches because they're true. It's good to. Sound effects are good, and like in a world, I mean, when I was on Mufasa, I think after my first pitch, I'm like, well, we know who our sound effects guy is going to be. I really get into it because it goes back to seeing what I see in my head. It goes back to the way it's acted and boarded and the shots and the cinematography and the lighting and everything, and it's my vision. Exactly right. So I will actually put a lot of heart into my pitch. And practicing is another good thing, because sometimes you will have boarded so much, and then if you wait till the last minute, you go through and you go, oh shit, I meant to hold that part.
Yeah.
I've done that before. And sometimes I know what I'm going to screw up on, and I'll build in a couple duplicates.
I
of
do the
those
same.
parts.
I do the same.
We all do it.
Yeah,
I'm not the only one.
Yeah.
Like, there's a panel that you're like,
No,
I
I'm
don't
like,
want to skip past this.
Yeah.
And so you put like 3 of them in there to be like, oh yeah, good. I didn't check
Yeah,
that.
and it's just like I want to hold this for comedy. I want to hold the beat. It's like the wind's going by and the characters are like this or whatever, and you want that comedy to hit, so you build it in because you know if like all of a sudden or my keyboard is just responding to subtle clicks and it just goes by and I go, oh fuck. And it can bother me, it can ruin a day. It also can make a day, And another thing is like I've actually even pitched with music before. Dude, I've pitched with straight Metallica before. Because I was working on Renfield, this Dracula movie, and like there's a lot of cursing and blood, which is luckily I was working on that night with vampires, and then during the day was the family film, but it felt right for that moment. I used like a Nicholas Britell soundtrack on something I pitched this week because it helps capture the moment and how I see it and how it's envisioned and how I see the scene as well. And then even if edit is not there, I will ask to pitch to edit. And I've recorded my pitches. There's been movies where I don't get time with the director, and instead of sending the PDF, I will send the PDF, but I also send a recorded pitch. And one director said, never stop doing this. He's like, this really helps. It helps me explain it, helps me see it. I can give this to edit, or we have to give to another director. The timing is another part of it. So all of that really, really helps, when you're kind of trying to get like your point across, for sure. So just kind of keep all that in consideration when you're pitching your stuff out.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think when I was trying to figure out how to pitch, back in the day when we had these things called DVDs, you would sort of watch people pitching, and they would do all these like amazing character voices, and they were hilarious. And I was like, I'm screwed. I am not a voice guy. I'm like, Dave, I lean very heavily on sound effects. But I think the switch that clicked in my head that I was able to sort of figure out like my pitching style was I understood storytelling. And so if I just looked at it as I'm telling the director a story, and I kind of modulate the way I'm speaking and the tone of my voice with the type of story I'm telling. That's so great. If it's kind of a sad or somber scene, I might start talking a little lower and being a little softer in the room. But if it's a big, exciting action sequence, I might bring up the energy, and sort of that's kind of how I approach, and a lot of sound effects.
Wow.
That helps. It also keeps the executives and everyone watching interested. Because
Right.
You got to keep them engaged.
Right.
They watch a lot of these at
You're
times.
selling your sequence.
Yeah.
You're selling it. You're selling it. Awesome. Guys, this has been so great. We are kind of getting near the end, so I'll just take a couple of questions from the audience, but just want to get your grades here. You all get A+. Colman, A- for the seductive comment, but that's cool.
I'm always a little bit, inappropriate. I told them my whole life.
It's an A++ for me, though, so I think
Oh,
you're
yeah, perfect. There you go.
Extra credit.
There you go. Excellent. Does anyone have any questions? All right. I'll get this one first. Hi.
Hi. My question is, I'm a prospective story artist myself, and currently I'm having a hard time making a portfolio for an internship because I'm slammed with school. But I was wondering, what's a key element for a story artist in their portfolio? What are people looking for? What are recruiters looking for in portfolios? Is it more personal work? Like, is there anything that you've seen that people latch on to? So I guess to simplify, what's good to see in a storyboarder's portfolio, especially if they're starting out?
Great question.
I taught a panel earlier, and honestly, story. A lot of times I feel like everybody's focused on drawing, the art. Like that'll be the thing. Like good art will catch somebody's attention, but then it goes like, well, what the hell are you saying? It's like I don't get what's happening here. Why would he make that decision? Why would he so the art goes out the window. Like you really gotta know where you're trying to go. I think stick to like primal stuff, like this person's hungry or tired or saving my child or whatever, blah blah blah. Like really thinking about the human element in the story that you're trying to get across, and how quickly can you do that? It takes less than a minute. To really do that, but you can tell right away somebody understands human story, whereas somebody really doesn't, and they're just relatable.
Something that's relatable.
Right. Yeah, really being relatable.
Something that's relatable. Great. Hi.
How does remote work, how is that affecting the story process? It seems like collaboration in the story room is a really vital part of how stories get developed, and I'm wondering if remote work is really undermining that, or if it's been lost in translation at all.
We figured it out pretty quick. I mean, I'm not an introvert at all, crazy extrovert, but for us at the studio, it wasn't that tough at all, especially on the story side of it. It was, set up the meeting, have the conversation, and everyone's like, all right, we're gonna go draw. And like David was saying, recording videos of your pitches and sending that to the team. It was pretty simple. But I love being back in person now. I love the organic nature of finding things together. Like Justin said, we spend a lot of time just chatting, chit-chatting, joking about crazy stuff, and running into people here and there that are telling you something. It's insane how valuable that stuff is to our daily lives, let alone our creative process. So I'm in love with that. But in terms of the practicality and sort of like, well, we got to get it done of it all, it was pretty simple. We're all artists, so we can find that place. We put our headphones on and just dive into whatever we're doing.
Right.
I love it in person. I'm very happy to be back in the studio.
Cool.
Yeah.
Michelle, you did. I mean, Oni was practically probably all.
So recently I wrapped up on Oni, like actually it's a year ago. That's not recent, but that was done all
recent
from
enough.
home, and it was an amazing project because we had people working from Los Angeles, Berkeley, Japan, Europe. It was almost like an international project, and it was like almost the benefits of remote work for that reason is you kind of have like a team working 24/7. Like the moment that we're done, Japan team is up and they're working immediately. So I feel like remote work has helped like give more people opportunities in that sense. And remote work does help like you with your own, I don't know, if you have personal projects, it's easier to like, do less context switching. You don't have to drive home. You could just immediately like, well, I'm done with that. I could just switch over to my other computer and work on my own thing. But I do also feel like there are some benefits to working from home, like for example, recording pitches or just like doing Zoom screen share. Sometimes I just remember days of sitting in an actual story room, but like you have sometimes like the whole team there and it's just like, I don't know, it's like you have to like try to see the screen. Sometimes someone's head is blocking or I don't know. There's just like things that get in the way of sitting in a physical room, but when everyone is just clearly looking at the Zoom screen, I feel like it plays a lot clearer at times, especially with like edit too, because edit also has to like sometimes understand what you're pitching or boarding, so.
Right. I think we're getting close. We may have time for one or two more, maybe probably one more.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Aloha. Thank you for your time today. Thank you. My question is actually the opposite from the first question. Is there any when you were looking at storyboard portfolios, like deal breakers, what you do not want to see? Because for me personally, I tend to over animate because when I look at other people's portfolios, they over animate, and that's the trap I fall into. So I want to hear your thoughts about this. Thank you.
Great.
I feel like many portfolios that I've seen lately, like people try to show you that they can do everything. So they show you, story sequences, but also character design and locations and personal stuff and blah, blah, blah. So I really like to see the thinking process behind story sequence or, for example, sometimes they show you like gesture drawings, but also like, they take some characters and they show them doing different things like daytime routines and stuff. I like that because that means that when you take a story page, a script page, you're not just going to be storyboarding that line, but you're thinking behind that and you're thinking about what the character is feeling and thinking and why he makes that choices, and so it's an extra thing that I like to see, but I don't want to see necessarily that you can do also character design or locations because I prefer that you know what you want and you're really good at that thing, and so just put all your effort in that. And also think that a recruiter doesn't have a lot of time. Usually, maybe they get like 5 minutes to watch everything in a portfolio and they get distracted and then coffee arrives and they leave the desk or whatever. And so you kind of have to convince them in the first 2 minutes. So just show your best stuff immediately.
I think jumping off what Alessandra's saying is, I think it's kind of two things for me. One is, the stuff that isn't storyboards, keep it tight and just a few pages, and everything in your portfolio, character designs, cafe sketches, like whatever you are putting in there, show that you're a storyteller. So if you've got cafe sketches in there, maybe it was a couple that was breaking up, or it was a couple that was getting engaged in when you were sketching in the park or something. So try to find story
Moments, yeah.
that you're doing that. And even if you're doing character designs, maybe it's 2 characters interacting or 3 or whatever. So like anything that isn't board should also be kind of directed at like, I am a storyteller, I am a story person. And then I think as far as boards are concerned, back when I was putting my portfolio together years ago, you always heard like, we want to see a dramatic sequence, we want to see a funny sequence, and we want to see an action sequence. And you know what? You might not be an action boarder, or you might not be funny. You might be great at emotional stuff. And so I think don't like play to your strengths. If you're good at action and you're good at drama, those are the 2 sequences that you put in your portfolio, and that's it. Don't put in a funny sequence just because you think there's a requirement for it. Because that's going to be the thing like, well, yeah, but this thing is kind of so. Like, this stuff is awesome, but I'm a little worried about that.
Yes,
so
right.
just, like,
It hurts 'em.
It hurts you. So put your best foot forward and only your best work in.
Yeah, and to be honest, I think, oh, go ahead, Colman.
You want to apply for the job you want. So
Yeah.
like everyone who starts putting in everything in there, like, but I can do this. I'm like, that's great, but that's not what we're looking for.
Yeah.
And another thing is also keep it loose, because the reality is like you're not going to get to clean up like that much. It really doesn't happen. I mean, up towards a screening, yeah, if you're lucky. So like keep it loose and rough,
Yep.
and it's clear and you're loose and rough.
Yeah.
You know. So
Clarity.
Yeah, but yeah. Anyway. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. You guys are all so special. Thank you so much for your answers and your time today. Really appreciate it. It's been really terrific. You guys are so great. Thank you to Lightbox and
Yes.
Bobby too. And
Let's give it up
Commander
for Mike
2.
Daley.
Hey! All right.
I was gonna say
If you have any more questions, I'll stick around. These guys are probably pretty busy, so they're running around. But
Booth
Coleman's
102. Booth 102.
Well, yeah. Coleman's at booth 102. Michelle, where are you?
709.
709. So they're in there. Go
102.
by, stop by, say hi to them.
And I enjoyed this as much as hope you guys did. Talking with you guys, this was awesome.
Yeah, this is
good.
really awesome.
Great.
Real
Yeah.
quick, real quick.
I got the chills, man.
Real quick story.
I
Quick
know,
story.
Doing this.
Yo, about this had to be early 09 or late 08. I was following you on Blogspot, and I remember you had, yes.
Oh God.
David, you had photos. I remember you posted photos of the arrival of your sketchbook, and you had them on your driveway.
Yeah.
And I just remember looking at that and being like, yo, that's so amazing. Like, that just felt, I was in Chicago, right? And the industry didn't exist, right? All these years later, how did you and I meet? My wife is pregnant with our daughter. Your wife is pregnant. We're at the hospital in Bourbon.
Breastfeeding class.
Yes.
Wow.
I'm not joking.
And that was how we met.
Yeah.
No idea. And since then, just being able to sort of talk with you, chat with you whenever we do. But I'm speaking toward the sort of human element of it all. You guys are on the journey. Keep going in that. You never know sort of where this thing ends up. And,
True.
And
Be nice to everyone.
Yeah.
And just building on that, like look around you, the people sitting next to you. These are all the people that are super interested in story. This is the story, the people you'll be working with. So great. Thanks, guys. Thank you for coming.